All right, so now let's look at adding some collisions and some jumping to actually make it a platformer. So I've added a couple more objects and sprites to my game. I added the main one we're going to look at first is this O solid ground. And it's just really, again, we're just white boxing at this point or gray boxing. It's just a really simple box to add as some kind of platform or ground. And then one thing that we want to point out too in our player is that it has this origin point, and it's usually set for the top upper left, and you want to change that to your middle center. And this is kind of just going to be the center of your player object and something to keep in mind. So let's go out to our room and we'll actually build out a level. So we could just simply drag our ground over into our level, and we could even hold down Alt and drag to make a bunch of copies. But there's actually an even more efficient way of doing that. So I'll go ahead and undo and delete these copies. And if we take a look at our sprite, there's this category in here called 9slice. If you enable 9slice, and you can have it change to tile mode to repeat. So now when I go to my room and I have my tile, when I stretch this out, instead of stretching it out, it's going to repeat my tile pattern, which again, this kind of will speed stuff up as you start making your rooms a lot bigger, a lot more complex. And let's go ahead and add some spikes. And then we'll add a simple flag at the end. And again, I'm keeping the sprites really simple, so it allows me to iterate at a quicker pace. So let's go ahead and add some movement to our player and include our collision. So go ahead and open up our steps and pull up move and collide. And go ahead and drag and drop that in here. And since we're actually using this, we're going to go ahead and delete our assign variable, because it's going to be included within our move and collide now. Now we have, instead of the X variable, we already have it here as X distance and Y distance. Now we want to select our move object, and that's going to be our solid ground. So then our X distance is going to be move X. And then we want to create some variables too. We're going to create one called move Y, and we're going to create one called jump speed. So now I have 4 variables in my game. So now we can set our Y distance to move Y. And then we'll have our max movement be walk speed. And our Y movement be jump speed. So let's add one more step in here as well. Since we got rid of our other variable, I want to make sure that our movement is resetting to 0 if we're not holding down anything on the keyboard. So we'll go ahead and drag our assigned variable right at the top. And that'll be, again, our move X and make it a value of 0. So let's go ahead and test this out. And now I can simply move back and forth. I collide with the wall, but I don't have any gravity yet. So let's take a look at adding some Y values. So now first I want to check to see if we are on the ground. And we're going to do that with an if function to check for that. So we'll say if object at place. So we're going to drop that down right after the move and collide. And again, this is going to be our solid ground object. And we'll just select have X be 0, but then we'll have Y be 2 because the distance between the center of our object and the floor will be 2. And then everything else we'll leave as is. And then we're going to assign a variable. So if this is true, our move Y. And then we're going to do an if key down for our jump. And this time we'll leave it at space, and that'll work for my jump. And then I will assign my move Y to the value of jump speed, or minus jump speed. So last, we want to see if it isn't touching ground, then we want it to start falling. So we'll go back up to our if object is in place, and we'll add an else, and we'll go back to an if variable. And we'll say if move Y is less than 10, then we'll assign a variable our move Y to 1. And then make sure that you click relative as well. And then I'm actually going to increase my jump speed to 12. Let's go ahead and test this out. Hit play. And I can jump across my platforms. But let's create some collisions that work on our spikes as well as our flag. So it's going to be another if object is at place. So we'll go ahead and drop that right after our else. And this time we're going to select our spikes. And then if it's true, we want to run a custom function called room restart. Again, go ahead and delete your brackets. So now when we hit play, when we hit the spikes, it restarts our room. And then we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to add another if object is at place. We're going to call another function. And then we're going to add one called room go to next. And then we're going to make sure that our object is our flag. And we actually need to create another room before this will actually go anywhere. So we can always just duplicate this room. We can open it up and change stuff around. So back to our first room. And really, again, I'm not making them that different because we are just kind of testing out the basic functions and I can iterate. So now, yep, when I get to the flag, it changes to our next room. So see how far you can get with just kind of these basic setups, see how many different levels you can get and make it interesting. And in our next video, we'll look at even adding some more functions.